Hey, it's Rachel Gregg and welcome to another video in my Dina Wakley Blue art journal. I'm starting out by using two white tags and I'm going to be adding these tags into the journal once I'm finished. And what I'm using today is I'll be using Dina's new release stamps for February 2021 and some of her stencils. So you can see that stencil just there on the right hand side. That's one of her new ones. It's called Bumps. And what I've done to begin with these two tags is I've just swiped on some lemon paint just to give that just a nice little painterly background, just using a craft squeegee. And now I'm using that bump stencil to add on some turquoise paint. And on that little ink blending tool, I've got the new domed ink foams. So Ranger have come out with some domed ink foams, which are, well, as the name suggests, they're little domes. So rather than being the flat little circular ones that come normally with those mini ink blending tools, they've now got some domed ones. And the foam used on that is a real dense foam, which really helps in making the paint spread really easily. And also because of the domed shape, it is much easier to stencil through those stencils without getting that harsh sort of circle look. It just means you can press down fairly easily and know that you're not going to get that circle shape. So it's really easy to use, and they're also washable, which is great. So I'll wash out that paint from that little dome when I'm finished with my stenciling. So what I'm doing now is I've just cut out or torn out, I should say, some little bits of book pages just to add there on those tags, and I haven't stuck them down yet. I've just put them there just to play around with my placement, but usually when I'm making tags I do like to kind of have the rule of thirds going, so I will put them down there somewhere down on that bottom third, especially where I've just finished that last bit of stenciling. And that other stencil that I did use on that second tag, see those little stripes down there on that right hand side tag, that's actually from a stencil called Marks. And so it's got different bits and pieces, like different marks on there. I think about 4 different types of marks on that stencil, so that makes it fun to use. And now what I'm doing is stamping up some of the Ledger girls. This is a new stamp set from Dina, and it's got a few different girls there with ledger paper behind them. And I'm just stamping that using the archival jet black ink, and I've stamped it a couple of times. So I stamped it first, which is the main image, and then I went and stamped it to the right hand side without re-inking, just to give it that shadow look and that like the continuity. So you've got 3 different little girls there, so they're there on their tag. So I'm just sticking down the book page now, just using a little bit of gel medium, and that just adheres that quite nicely to the tag. And now I'm just using some of Dina's washi tape. So Dina's got a few different types of washi tape, and this is just like a nice little script. It's just nice and thin, so I'm just putting it inside the center there of those book pages just to add a little bit more black to the tags, and just it's just an easy way to add a little bit of script as well. So I want to add some definition to the stenciling, so I've just grabbed a little gel pen. This is one of my favorite gel pens for using for journaling. It's called an Inkjoy pen. And I'm just outlining there all of those little stencil marks that I did with the turquoise. So this is a new alphabet stamp set called Block Alpha, and it's got all the different alphabet letters in there, and you can just pull out whichever letters that you need just to create your own titles and words, which is really fun. So I'm just using or creating the word B, and what I did there was I just wanted to space out where I'm going to do another word underneath, so I wanted to make sure that I still left enough room for that. So I've just stamped out the B, and you can easily just put the letters back in their little spots. So just pulling out the Y-O-U, because now I'm going to be stamping the U, B-U. So I've just put that on my little block. Now I do have a larger block, but because I just had this little one here on my desk, it just means that it can only fit 2 of the letters on there, so that's fine. I'm just doing the Y and the O, and then I'll just take those off and then do the U. And it's interesting when I'm stamping out words whether I prefer to do the whole word at once, if you can, like if you've got all the letters and you don't need to repeat a letter, or whether you do them individually. And it's interesting because sometimes I find that it's good to do them individually because you can rotate the letter in a different way if you want to, rather than how you might just put them on the block. So here's my blue journal. Now, as you might have seen, there was a page on the left hand side that was completed, and this is why I'm using these yellow and turquoise, or the lemon and turquoise colors, because I know that it's going to go on this right hand side, so I still want it to kind of be cohesive with the left hand side. And what I'm doing now is just spraying some of the Gilt gloss spray through that little the bump stencil. So I sprayed it through the stencil up on the right hand side, and then because the stencil had some of that gloss spray on the stencil, I then just pressed it down on the left hand side. And what I'm doing now is I'm using the apricot gloss spray and just through that marks stencil. And because it's a really light colour, it's showing up at the moment, but because the denim is so porous, it's actually seeped right into that denim, and it doesn't kind of quite stay as bright and vibrant as I'd like it to. Maybe because I didn't shake up the gloss spray enough. I'm not sure, but it also is one of the pastel colours, so I was probably trying a little bit too hard to make it very, very opaque on that denim. So what I'm doing now is I am adding some of that apricot to the tags. So I've used some of the leftover stuff that was on the stencil and just pressed it onto the BU stencil, and then I'm just spraying a little bit onto the Ledger Girl tag, just so some of that apricot comes through on the tag as well. And you can see on the right hand side how the apricot really has seeped into that denim, but on the actual denim you can still see it, so it is very faint, which is still quite nice, but it's just not as vibrant as kind of what I was hoping. So I'm going in now here with a little bit of white. This is the gloss spray, so I'm just sort of shaking it up. Now, I've had a different lid on this gloss spray. It got a little bit mixed up in one of the classes that I was teaching, so I think it's got a cheddar nozzle on it, because every time I go to spray it, a little bit of cheddar comes out when it should be just white. So, I just run with it. So it's got a little bit of cheddar, a little bit of white, and I'm just adding a little bit of leftover bits there to the rest of the page. But again, this white spray didn't stay as vibrant as I would have liked it to, but it still adds a little bit of a nice layer to the background. And my background is getting quite busy now, and I'm just adding a little bit more of those bumps over the page. So you can see here how those tags now go with the left-hand page with those colours. And I'm just using a Posca pen, a Posca white paint pen, to go over those little bumps there on the denim. And I'm not being too worried about whether I'm getting a lot of paint out of that pen. I just really want just a hint of that white anyway, but I am shaking it up just to get a little bit more out, because you still need to shake it up to get more to run out of that nib. And to give it a little bit more definition, I'm using that same gel pen over the paint and the denim, and I was quite surprised at how really nicely it worked. I hadn't used this pen before directly on the denim, and it just looks really good. So I've just done that just to add a little bit of more definition to those little bumps in the background. So now I'm just placing my two tags, just figuring out if I'm going to have them on an angle, and now I'm just adding a little bit of baker's twine. So this is just a black and white baker's twine, just threading it through there for each tag, just to finish off each tag and just to give it a little bit more texture within the journal. And there's a couple of different ways that you can adhere tags into your journal. You could either use some gel medium or some double-sided tape or glossy accents or any type of wet glue, and that will stick those tags down quite nicely. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to leave these tags a little bit loose so you could still kind of lift them up, or they weren't necessarily stuck down. So what I'm using is just a stapler. And I'm just went in from the top there. Now I'm just going through to the sides here for this tag here and just adhering that tag, and it's just a fun little way, just adds a little bit more texture as well, just with that metal staple. And I keep just pressing down the denim as I go, just to make sure that everything's flat, or as flat as I can get it, so I don't kind of make a buckle or a bubble there with the denim underneath. And I just want to add a little bit of my own journaling, so I've got that gel pen out again, and I'm just writing a couple of little words here just to do with the BU sentiment, and I'm just writing a little bit of journaling there on the left hand side of the tag, and just a little few words down on that right hand side as well. Now I want to add a little bit more metallic of that gilt metallic spray to the page, so I'm just, I've shaken up the gloss spray and then just opened up the nozzle, and then just splattering on some of that gilt gloss spray over the page. So now that I have everything's basically dry on the background of that denim, and you really can't see much of that white gloss spray that I did do beforehand, so I thought I did want to actually add some of those stripes here from that mark stencil. So I thought, all right, well, the best way that I can do it now is just use paint. So I've got another one of those domes on my mini ink blending tool, and I'm now just adding white paint directly through that stencil onto that background of that denim. And it's just adding just another little layer and a little bit more texture there to the page. And I've noticed on the stencil the little humps there. See the little humps there on that stencil? And I thought that's a really cool little pattern, just to create a little tiny border just on that bottom right and this top left. So I'm just putting that through the stencil just to give that a nice little border. And I've noticed that once I start doing art journaling, I just keep going and going and going until I've kind of not really covered everything, but just added little bits and pieces and details throughout the page. Okay, so here's a little look just to give you a close-up as well. One thing I didn't mention before is I actually did some sewing on some of the tags. So you'll see the threads there, and I just did a straight stitch and a zigzag stitch just to add a little bit more texture to those tags. I love using sewing and threads and stuff on my tags and my projects too. So I hope you've really enjoyed this art journal page. It's just a nice little fun way just to use paint and sprays and inks and stamps and sewing, and a really fun way to add texture to those denim pages in your journal. If you'd like to see more of my art journal pages in the Blue Journal, check out the other videos on my YouTube channel, and you can also see more of my work at rachelgregg.com. Thanks so much for watching.